The Duke stopped in the doorway and forgot how to breathe. Moonlight spilled through the glass walls of the conservatory, silver and quiet, touching leaves and shadows. In the center of that still world stood a woman with her back to him, slowly slipping out of a paint-stained dress. Her hair had come loose from its pins, warm brown waves falling over bare shoulders. For one frozen moment, time held its breath. The Duke of Hartwell, known in every drawing room as cold and unreachable, could not look away. But it was not desire that struck him first. It was something far more dangerous. It was truth. The year was 1883, and Hartwell Manor slept beneath a soft June sky. The corridors were silent as Alaric Pembroke, Duke of Hartwell, walked alone with measured steps. At 34, he carried his title like a locked door. Society called him the Ice Duke, a man of duty, silence, and distance. His marriage, arranged and careful, had only deepened that distance. He lived among people, yet felt entirely alone. The conservatory was the only place where his armor loosened. His late mother had loved it there, among rare plants and fragile blooms. On this night, he had come seeking quiet. Instead, he found a moment that would undo everything he believed about his life. The woman gasped when she sensed him. She turned quickly, pressing the clean dress she held to her chest. Her eyes were amber-colored, wide not with fear, but with shock at being seen. She made a clumsy curtsy, still holding the fabric. "Your Grace," she said softly. "I did not think anyone would come here at night." Alaric forced himself to look away from her bare back and toward the plant beside her. A strange white flower was opening, its petals glowing as if lit from within. "The Queen of the Night," she murmured, forgetting him for a second. "It blooms only once a year." "Only for a few hours. I had to paint it before dawn." He recognized her then, Seraphina Wright, the head gardener's daughter. He knew her only by reputation. Quiet, educated, always working, always careful. He had never truly looked at her before. "I have the key," he said, his voice rough. "The conservatory is locked after dusk." She nodded, cheeks flushed. "Mrs. Dinward. Winters told me it would bloom tonight. I worked too fast and ruined my dress. I am sorry for the impropriety." His gaze drifted to the canvas on the easel. What he saw there stole the air from his lungs. It was not a gentle hobby painting. It was exact, every vein of the petal, every curve of the stem, every detail captured with devotion and precision. It was science and beauty woven together. "You studied botanical illustration," he said quietly. "Yes," she answered, pride flickering through her composure. "In Florence and Paris. My mother taught me first." "Your mother worked with mine," Alaric said slowly, memory stirring. "Arabella Pembroke spoke of a woman named Constance Wright." Seraphina's face softened, then tightened with old pain. "She was kind to us when everything else was taken away. There were stories buried there, stories no one had dared speak aloud." She turned away and dressed quickly, her movements modest and dignified. When she faced him again, she stood taller, calmer. "I publish under a male name," she said. "S. W. Hartley. It is the only way my work is taken seriously." Something cracked inside him then. A world that forced talent into hiding. A woman standing before him, brilliant and unseen. "Finish your painting," he said after a long pause. "I will stay. No one will disturb you." She studied him, searching for mockery or command. Finding neither, she nodded and returned to her work. They spent the night in silence. Alaric sat on an iron bench among tall ferns, watching her paint as the flower continued to open. He watched the way she bit her lip when focusing, the way her breathing matched the movement of her brush. The air smelled of paint, earth, and night-blooming flowers. For the first time in years, he felt awake. When dawn touched the glass, the flower began to close. Seraphina set down her brush and turned to him. "Thank you," she said simply. "No," he replied. "Thank you." It has been a long time since I witnessed something real. Their eyes met, and something dangerous took root. The following days passed beneath steady rain. Hartwell Manor seemed washed in gray and green, and Alaric found his thoughts returning again and again to the woman in the conservatory. To her quiet strength, to her hands stained with color. It was Miss Winters, the housekeeper who had loved his mother, who brought the excuse fate required. "There has been an accident, Your Grace," she said. A candle damaged the portrait of Sir Cornelius Pembroke, the founder of the family line. Alaric felt the weight of history settle on his shoulders. "Send for a restorer from London." Mrs. Winters hesitated. "Miss Wright has training in restoration. She has already saved several works from the library." He looked up sharply. "Send for her. Prepare the old music room." 3 hours later, Seraphina stood before the damaged portrait, apron tied over her dress, hair pinned back. "I can save it," she said with calm certainty. "But I must work here. For several weeks." "Let people talk," Alaric replied. So began a quiet season that changed him. She worked in silence. He found reasons to sit nearby. Papers became excuses. Tea became routine. And slowly, the walls between them thinned. On the 5th day, without looking up, she said, "You do not need excuses to be here. This is your home." Caught, he smiled for the first time in years. On the 12th day, the ladder broke. She fell. Alaric moved without thought, catching her, crashing to the floor with her in his arms. Paint spilled. Brushes scattered. For a breathless moment, she lay against his chest, her hands pressed flat over his heart. Their eyes locked. Neither moved. He said her name. She kissed him. It was not gentle. It was desperate, frightened, honest. Years of restraint shattered in a single truth. When they finally pulled apart, trembling, the world rushed back. "We cannot," she whispered. "I know," he said. But neither let go. 3 days later, the black carriage arrived. Lady Genevieve Harrogate stepped into Hartwell Manor, flawless and cold, sent by family and expectation. And with her arrival, everything they had not yet dared name stood in danger of being destroyed. The battle had begun. The presence of Lady Genevieve Harrogate changed the air of Hartwell Manor overnight. Where silence had once lived, watchful eyes now followed every step. Where Alaric had found brief freedom beside Seraphina, duty returned like a tightening chain. Lady Genevieve was flawless in every visible way. Her gowns were perfect, her manners exact, her voice trained to please without warmth. She was the woman chosen for him long before either of them had been asked. Seraphina felt it immediately. She kept her distance, returning to the music room only when summoned for her work. Whispers followed her through corridors. Servants lowered their voices. Guests stared too long. She had lived with judgment before, but this felt sharper, more dangerous. Alaric watched it happen and burned with helpless anger. At dinner, Lady Genevieve spoke lightly of Paris fashions and family connections. Then, with a delicate smile, she turned her attention toward the gardens. "I hear your head gardener was once a professor," she said. How quaint. Such unusual choices give an estate character, I suppose. Alaric's jaw tightened. "Tobias Wright is the finest botanist I know." Lady Genevieve nodded, as if indulging a child. "Of course. One must simply be careful with boundaries." Her mother, Lady Thessaly Harrogate, watched everything with sharp, satisfied eyes. That night, the scandal broke. A London paper arrived at Hartwell before dawn. Mrs. Winters brought it to Alaric with trembling hands. The headline was, "Cruel and Precise." A false story painted Seraphina as a scheming woman, dismissed from another noble household for improper behavior. Lies were dressed as facts. Her reputation was destroyed in neat printed lines. Alaric felt sick. He found Seraphina in the music room, still working by lamplight. She smiled when she saw him. That smile vanished when he placed the paper in her hands. She read every word. Her fingers shook, but her spine stayed straight. "It is a lie," she said calmly. "All of it." "I know," Alaric replied. "I believe you." She finally looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Belief is not enough. The world prefers lies when they protect power." "They will not destroy you," he said fiercely. "They already have," she whispered. Within hours, Lord Ignatius Pembroke arrived. Alaric's uncle carried authority like a weapon. He spoke without greeting, without kindness. "You have endangered everything," he said. "The trust, the estate, the name." "She is innocent," Alaric answered. "Innocence is irrelevant," Lord Ignatius snapped. "Perception is law. You will announce your engagement to Lady Genevieve at the summer ball, or I will assume control of Hartwell." The threat was real. 7 years without power. 7 years of ruin. When his uncle left, Alaric sat alone in the dark until Mrs. Winters returned with a key he had not seen in years. She led him to his mother's sealed studio. Inside waited the truth. Portfolios filled with botanical illustrations. Letters. Proof. His mother's handwriting beside Seraphina's mother's name. Constance Wright. They had worked together. They had been silenced together. The same lie had destroyed Constance decades earlier. Alaric understood everything then. That night, he showed Seraphina the evidence. She wept silently, holding her mother's work as if touching a ghost. "I will go to the ball," he said, "and I will choose you, no matter the cost." Before she could argue, the river rose. Days of rain turned the Derwent wild. Water swallowed fields and cottages. Bells rang in warning. Panic spread. Alaric did not hesitate. He worked alongside tenants, hauling children through floodwater, saving what could be saved. Tobias Wright labored beside him. Lady Genevieve surprised everyone by tending the injured with steady hands, and Seraphina became something fierce and radiant. At the gatehouse, she organized shelter, fed the frightened, held crying infants. Mud stained her dress. Blood marked her sleeves. She did not notice. Alaric watched her and knew there was no turning back. That night, exhausted and shaking, she told him she would leave. "I will not ruin you," she said. "Tell them I deceived you." He refused. "I choose you," he said, "even if I lose everything." She kissed him in the rain, and the promise became unbreakable. The summer ball arrived beneath heavy chandeliers and sharper whispers. Seraphina descended the staircase wearing a simple satin dress borrowed from Alaric's mother's chest. She had never looked more herself. The room went silent. Alaric crossed the floor and took her hand. They danced. Then he spoke. He named the lie. He named the truth. He revealed Seraphina as the artist the scientific world already respected under another name. And then, before nobility and scandal alike, he knelt. She said yes. The room fractured. Some applauded. Some fled. Lady Genevieve stunned everyone by clapping first, then declaring her own love freely chosen. But the cost came swiftly. The trust was enforced. Control taken. The punishment reduced but real. Alaric married Seraphina quietly. They left Hartwell Manor and moved into Thornfield Cottage at the edge of the estate. Smaller, simpler, free. Life there was not easy. Money was tight. Judgment constant. But laughter returned to Alaric's life. Peace returned to Seraphina's hands. She painted. He learned to live. Months later, she told him she was with child. Then came recognition. Seraphina was invited to present her work under her real name. She stood before men who once ignored her and spoke with steady truth. They listened. Applause followed. That night, in a modest room far from luxury, she told him she was carrying twins. Hope bloomed again. But even as joy grew, shadows gathered. A name from the past returned. The Duke of Ashworth, the man who had destroyed her mother. He came to Hartwell believing his power untouched. He was wrong. Alaric confronted him with proof, with witnesses ready to speak, with a world beginning to change. Ashworth chose survival over pride. The retraction appeared in print days later. Truth finally spoke. Seraphina visited her mother's grave and whispered forgiveness into the wind. Spring followed. The twins were born amid pain and fear, a girl and a boy, Arabella and Tobias. Life began again, but the battle was not over, for as the family healed, the world watched closely. And not everyone was finished trying to break what love had rebuilt. The final reckoning still waited ahead. Spring came softly to Thornfield Cottage, as if the world itself was learning to tread gently around the new family that lived there. Seraphina moved more slowly now, her body still recovering from the birth of the twins. Arabella slept with her fists curled like she was already ready to fight the world. Tobias was quieter, his dark eyes always watching, always learning. Alaric spent hours simply sitting with them, astonished that such small beings could undo a lifetime of cold restraint. For the first time, he was not the Ice Duke. He was simply a husband and a father. Life at Thornfield was modest. Gone were the endless dinners and glittering guests. Instead, there were shared meals, laughter over burned bread, and evenings by lamplight where Seraphina painted while Alaric read aloud. Judgment still followed them in nearby villages, but it no longer ruled them. Yet the past was not finished. The retraction printed by the Duke of Ashworth had shaken society, but it had not destroyed him. Men like Ashworth did not vanish easily. They waited. They plotted, and when autumn arrived, so did his final attempt. The Duke of Ashworth came to Hartwell unannounced. Alaric met him in the main house, not allowing the man anywhere near Thornfield. Ashworth looked older now. His confidence cracked, but bitterness sharpened his words. "You think you won," Ashworth said. "You humiliated me." "You destroyed a woman," Alaric replied coldly. "And you destroyed her family," Ashworth sneered. "And yet you married into that same blood. How poetic." "How foolish." Alaric did not raise his voice. He reached into his coat and placed a thick bundle of letters on the table. "My mother kept everything," he said. So did others, women who were too afraid to speak before. They are no longer afraid. Ashworth's face drained of color. "These letters go to the press tomorrow," Alaric continued, "along with sworn statements. You will be remembered not as a duke, but as a coward who preyed on silence." "You would destroy the nobility," Ashworth hissed. "No," Alaric replied. "I will destroy the lie that nobility excuses cruelty." Ashworth left Hartwell that day a broken man. The letters were published. Society erupted. Women whispered truths that had been buried for decades. Men who once stood untouchable found their names spoken with shame. It was not justice for all, but it was a beginning. Seraphina read the papers in silence, holding Arabella against her chest. When she finished, she closed her eyes and breathed. "My mother can rest now," she said. Change came swiftly after that. The Royal Botanical Society offered Seraphina a permanent position, not hidden, not anonymous, public, respected. She hesitated, not for fear, but for her children. Alaric did not hesitate at all. "We will build our lives around truth," he said, "not convenience." They traveled to London together, then returned to Thornfield. Hartwell Manor slowly reopened its doors, not to empty tradition, but to purpose. Seraphina founded a small school in the Old East Wing. Women arrived from across England, daughters of farmers, widows, quiet geniuses who had never been allowed to learn. She taught them science and art as one discipline, precision with wonder, observation with courage. Lady Genevieve returned, not as a rival, but as an ally. She taught medical botany, her own cold elegance softened by purpose and love freely chosen. Mrs. Darioch, Winters ran the household with fierce pride, declaring the children her greatest achievement. Alaric reclaimed control of Hartwell not through threats, but through respect. The trust restrictions were lifted early, not because he begged, but because no one could deny the good being done. Years passed. The twins grew. Arabella became fearless, climbing trees and questioning everything. Tobias watched the world with quiet intensity, drawing before he could properly write. Thornfield echoed with life. Serafina published her great work under her full name. It traveled across Europe. She stood before halls once closed to her and spoke without fear. She was no longer defending herself. She was leading. On the 12th anniversary of the night in the conservatory, the Queen of the Night bloomed again. Serafina sat beneath it, older now, stronger, her hands steady. Alaric joined her, their children asleep nearby after a long summer day. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked softly. "Every day," he replied. "I walked in believing myself finished. I walked out changed." She smiled. "So did I." The flower opened fully, white and impossible, glowing against the dark. Their marriage was no longer whispered about. It was spoken of with awe, a union that defied class. That changed laws. That reminded a rigid world what love looked like when it refused to bow. Years later, when Hartwell Manor hosted its first class of graduating women scholars, Serafina stood beside Alaric and watched them step forward, confident and unafraid. The Duke took her hand. What did he see that night? Someone once asked him quietly. Alaric answered without hesitation. "A woman brave enough to undress herself of fear," he said, "and a truth strong enough to save us both." And so the story of the Ice Duke ended not in silence, but in legacy. A cold marriage became a fierce love. A forgotten woman became a voice. And a single moment, witnessed under moonlight, changed generations yet to come.